is you are giving out of your own resources in faith, getting your focus off of yourself and allowing God to use you through the means of your resources, your finances, to impact the lives of others. Hey, welcome to the Bible Keys channel, where we're just talking about Christianity, the Bible, faith, and reason. And we've been on this short series as we've been jumping into the new year, 2025, talking about what are some ways that I can be growing as a Christian in 2025. And for the next couple videos, we're going to be talking out of Matthew chapter 6, the very beginning. This is Jesus actually talking, and he lists off a couple of things that he talks about that they're not questions of if, but they're questions of when. So they're not questions of if you practice these things. He just kind of takes for granted that as Christians, we're going to be practicing these things. And the first is giving. The second is praying. And then the third is fasting. And so today we're going to talk about giving. And so in Matthew chapter 6, starting in verse 1, it says, "Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. Otherwise, you have no reward with your Father in heaven." So not really talking about that, but that follows into all these things. We're not supposed to do the things that we do to be seen so that we can get accolades or pats on the back or kudos, but we're supposed to do them because they're the right things to do, because they honor God and they love people. But we're just going to keep moving past that. I'm not spending time there. It says, starting in verse 2, "So whenever you give to the poor, don't sound a trumpet before you as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets to be applauded by people. Truly, I tell you, they have their reward. But when you give to the poor, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you." And again, it just says when you, right? So it assumes that giving to the poor is going to be a part of your lifestyle. And I think that that's really funny, because that's probably not super true for us in the culture that we live in the age that we live in. For some people, yes, some people make it a regular practice in their lives to be giving to organizations or to be serving at organizations, maybe soup kitchens or clothes giveaways, or whatever it might be, shelters to help people. And some do give to different organizations. Obviously, that's a thing. There are all kinds of like nonprofit organizations that help people all around the world. And I'm going to mention one in just a moment. But I don't think that this is actually a normal part of everyone's life, to the extent, that Jesus right here speaking just takes for granted when you give to the poor. And he's talking like, when you give, don't do it like this. Don't do it to gain accolades or so that people recognize you, but do it, in secret, and then God will actually reward you. And so he's saying, like, you're all giving, but some of you are giving for the wrong reason. Well, I would say that some of us aren't even giving. Some of us aren't even thinking about this idea of giving to the poor, giving to people who have less than we do. Generally, most of us, I think, are thinking about what more we would like to have. We're thinking about the grind. We're thinking about how we can get ahead. We're thinking about how we can get the assets or the things that we want to have, how we can become successful. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily wrong in every way all the time. Like, I think, like as a husband and a dad, I need to be thinking about how to provide for my kids and how to provide for my wife and how to pay the bills and, put food on the table and those kinds of things. So I'm not saying it's bad to think about those things. But what I am saying is that, perhaps we live in a culture that maximizes success, personal success, over everything else. And maybe one of the things that we can do this year to be growing as Christians is start thinking about, how can I be using my resources in ways that help somebody who isn't just me? If the only thing that my money ever goes towards is, my bank account, my savings, my investments, my assets, my success, okay, maybe I am going to be really successful, and maybe I'm also going to be a really greedy, jerk. I was going to use a worse word there, but we won't do that. And so I think, what we're being challenged to do is, and this is something it's going to be a refrain through a lot of this, through a lot of the videos, the next couple of videos, is we're being challenged to get ourselves out of ourselves, to stop focusing inwardly and to start focusing outwardly. And this is what Christ did, right? He sacrificed himself for the sins of the world, right? And so we're saying, like, how can I not just be focused on, my own personal well-being all the time, but how can I actually turn my eyes outward and be looking at the people around me? And I do think that there's a reality to, like, we do have to take care of our own affairs. We do have to take care of our own business. And so I'm not saying that we shouldn't do that. And even I pulled up this scripture. It is 2 Corinthians chapter 8, it's verses 13 and 14. So this is Paul talking, and he's talking about taking up an offering. But he says this, he says, it is not that there should be relief for others and hardship for you, but it is a question of equality. At the present time, your surplus is available for their need so that their abundance may in turn meet your need in order that there may be equality. And so I think, what that's saying is, you're not obligated to give so much that now you can't pay your bills, that now you can't make, put food on the table for your family or things like that. And so it's saying, like, don't be giving so much outwardly that there's relief for others, but now you've actually made life really difficult for yourself. And so I think that's true. And I think that's wise. And I think sometimes people might neglect that. I think, I know stories of people who maybe have been encouraged to give whether or not they should be giving in that moment. And I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that for many of us, we have a surplus. And for many of us, we've got 4 different streaming subscriptions. We go out to eat 3 times a week. We don't make coffee at home. We buy coffee out every single day. Like, that's surplus. Like, none of those things are necessary. And I'm not saying any of those things are bad, but what I'm saying is, what if instead of buying Chipotle 3 times a week, I bought Chipotle 1 time a week, and then with that other, $30, I gave towards Compassion International, which is an organization that helps impoverished kids in other nations, get supplies, get teaching, and learn about the Lord. So, like, what if I gave, instead of eating out 3 times a week, I ate out 1 time a week, and then I gave to that, and, like, that's not hard. That's not difficult. Like, we could do way more than that, is what I'm saying. And so my question to you is, like, what are some organizations, what are some things that you could be giving to that are helping the poor, helping people who need help, who are not as well off as you are, and maybe growing this year as a Christian is starting to think about those people, the people who have less and who that you can actually help, and that it's actually honoring God by you helping. And so I'm going to give you just a couple quick, pointers on where you could start looking. One is if you attend a local church, you should probably give in your local church, okay? Most local churches have some kind of outreach, some kind of giving into the community, whether they do it through the church itself or whether they just partner with other local community organizations and help out. So I also just think, like, this is kind of an aside, but if you're attending a church and you're getting fed there and you're growing in community there and you're taking advantage of maybe the kids' classes there and the weekend worship there and all those kinds of things, you should probably just be giving to the church anyways, because, pastors should eat too, but that's just, a beside the point. But the churches are also often giving to, again, the community that they live in, the community that they belong to. So give to your church. Also, you can look for organizations who are meeting needs, like whether it's local needs, whether it's like national needs here in the U.S. where I live. If you live in a different nation than in the nation that you live in, or whether it's international needs, you can be looking. I mentioned Compassion International earlier. I started giving to Compassion International like years and years ago, literally because I was looking at how much I was spending on Chipotle and how much it cost to sponsor a kid through Compassion International. And I felt convicted. I was like, dude, I'm just eating this money basically that I could be giving to something that's way better than, a burrito that's going to be gone in 5 minutes. And so, but Compassion isn't the only organization. So look online. And for me, I'm unapologetically Christian, right? So I'm going to look at organizations that are meeting physical needs, but also meeting spiritual needs, pointing people to Christ as well. And so I would say those are 2 things that you could look at: giving to your local church. If you're not a part of a local church, watch my last video and then become a part of a local church, okay? Maybe it was 2 videos ago, I don't remember. And then, so giving to your local church and then giving to organizations, whether locally globally that are helping people. And then what you're doing is you are giving out of your own resources in faith. Pray over it, believe that God's moving through it, so give out of your own resources in faith, getting your focus off of yourself and allowing God to use you through the means of your resources, your finances, to impact the lives of others. And I think, going back to Matthew chapter 6, it says, your giving may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. What does that reward look like? Doesn't matter. I could name off a couple different things. We're not doing it necessarily for the reward. We're doing it because we're obedient to God and God's going to move through it. But I do think what's great is that God does reward us. And I think one of the ways that God rewards us is that he makes us more like Christ. And that is what we want. That is, as Christians, that's how we want to live. We want to live like Christ. We want to be made more and more into the image of Christ. We want to reflect him in our world. And that is one of the rewards that we get, is that through this giving, we actually become more like Jesus. His character is made in us. And so I just want to encourage you, if you want to grow in 2025 as a Christian, be thinking about, how can I be giving? How can I be using my resources, the things that God has put in my hand, to bless the people around me, not for my own personal gain, but to be helping people around me who need it. So that's going to be it. Hey, listen, if you like these kinds of videos, and especially if you think these are helpful, and by helpful, I mean either challenging, encouraging, inspiring, maybe convicting a little bit, all of those are good things, because we want to be learning, want to be growing, want to be encouraged, and we want to be challenged. So if you find any of those things true for these videos, do me a favor, like, comment, subscribe, share with a friend. It just helps more people to see these, helps me kind of honestly just be encouraged to do this more and more and more often. And I just want to be helping people grow. I want to be an encouragement to other believers, to help people grow as Christians, grow in their faith, grow in their relationship with God. So would love to see it engage and interact in the video in that way. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.